Hello, fabulous students. So if you have to take the final timed essay exam, I want to give you a little bit of information about it here. So if we take a look at our prompt, the prompt is asking us to do a couple of things. First, it's asking us to read a piece of writing called On Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau. This is an excerpt from a longer piece he wrote called Walden. And the piece was written about 170 years ago. So some of the language is a bit archaic, but the ideas are incredibly timely, which is so interesting that the things humans struggled with 170 years ago are things that we continue to struggle with now. So for this in-class essay, we're going to use our analysis skills, our critical thinking, and our metacognition to respond to this idea of civil disobedience. What does it mean to be civilly disobedient? What's protest all about? What role does it have? Is there a way people can change the political situation? Or do we just have to accept what's happening? Thoreau asks all these very hard questions. So you're going to read through his piece. He wrote the piece in 1846, which was almost 20 years before slavery was made illegal. So he's responding to the idea of slavery. He's saying that slavery is bad. I think we can all agree with that, I hope. Right? Because if you don't, we should talk. Slavery is bad. And Henry David Thoreau is saying, even though this thing is still somehow legal, we have a moral imperative to do something. Even if the government of the company says it's okay to own another person, as a human being with a moral compass, we should recognize that that is wrong. And we should try and change the laws. And so that's what Thoreau is arguing here. And so as you read through his course on civil disobedience, you are going to answer some of these questions. So you have to answer 2 of the following questions. You don't have to answer all 4, just 2. In an excerpt from Civil Disobedience, Thoreau states, "If I devote myself to other pursuits and contemplations, I must first see at least that I do not pursue them sitting on another man's shoulders. I must get off him first, that he may pursue his contemplations too." So what Thoreau is saying in this older kind of way is that if I want to go after my own goals, I have to make sure I'm not stepping on other people to get there. Like if my goals mean that this whole group of people has to be subjugated, have to be victimized, have to be used in inhuman ways, I can't do that, right? As a moral person, I should not walk all over them to get what I want, to make myself comfortable. So that's what he's saying. So what extent do you agree with this? What examples can you draw from your own experience, from the political landscape around you? How do we make sure we're not sitting on another man's shoulders? How do we make sure we're not putting people down to raise ourselves up? 2, Thoreau also argues that citizens should do the right thing by challenging unjust laws that exist. What does it mean to be a good citizen? And is it the same thing as being a good person? And Thoreau would argue that being a good citizen is different than being a good person. A good person, in this piece, would say slavery is wrong. It's immoral. You cannot own another person. And a good citizen would say, well, I think it's bad to own another person. The law of the land says it's okay, so I'm just going to go with it. So there is a difference between being a good citizen and being a good person. One is ruled by morals and ethics. One is ruled by what is written down on a piece of legislation. So that is what Thoreau is talking about. So tell me, what does it mean to be a good citizen? What does it mean to be a good person? How are these things similar? How are they different? 3, how can a majority of one create change? So Thoreau says that one person can be a spark. One person can help lift others up. One person can make a difference. And so how might we see that play out now? How can a majority of one create change? We've seen a lot of unrest in the last couple years. So hopefully there's lots of examples you can think of times when people reacted against a law, against something that was being done that they felt was unjust. You can look at some of our case lists. You can look at some of our trial by media cases. You can look at the newspaper headlines, the Black Lives Matter movement, the reaction against Asian hate crimes that we've seen this last week. You could look at the different ways Indigenous people are fighting for their rights, how they're fighting against the hugely high murder rates that Indigenous people face and the lack of investigation. Like, how do these people groups who are oftentimes beaten down try and create change? Look at that majority of one, that small group that's trying to change something a bigger group has already established. And how does Thoreau use rhetorical questions to contribute to the persuasiveness of his message? Thoreau asks a lot of questions in this piece, and he doesn't answer all of them. He's asking his reader to think critically about these questions and to find answers for themselves. So how does his use of those kind of rhetorical questions contribute to how he's being persuasive? Does it make him more persuasive? Does it make him less persuasive? Does it make you think harder as a reader? So outline that. So pick 2 out of these 4, and you are going to write an actual essay. So this should be an essay, right? So an essay, we know, follows a standard format, right? So we're going to have an intro paragraph. That intro paragraph is going to give some context on Thoreau. Okay. On civil disobedience. Wow. Spelling is hard when you're talking out loud. So context for on civil disobedience and a thesis that tells me which 2 questions you're going to answer. But just like in our diagnostic essay, do not write a thesis statement that says, I will answer question 1 and 2. Do not do that. That is not a good thesis statement. A good thesis statement for this piece might be something like, let's see, I want to look at majority of one, and I want to look at being a good citizen versus being a good person. So if I was to write my thesis statement, it might be something like, on civil disobedience. And because it is the title of an excerpt of a larger work, it goes in quotation marks instead of italics. In On Civil Disobedience, the ideas of what it takes to be a good person versus what constitutes good citizen. So I could say in On Civil Disobedience, the ideas of what it takes to be a good person versus what constitutes a good citizen are examined. That tells me that I'm going to be answering question number 2. And then I also want to talk about question number 3, the idea of majority of one. So I'm going to incorporate that as well in here. And because I'm using the exact words, the majority of one, I'm going to put those in quotation marks as well. So I could say in On Civil Disobedience, the ideas of what it takes to be a good person versus what constitutes a good citizen are examined, as well as the concept of the majority of one and how a single individual can spark meaningful change. That would be my thesis statement. It tells what 2 questions I'm answering, but it doesn't say, I will answer questions 1 and 2. Right? Because that's not good writing. So that's our intro paragraph there. Our first paragraph will be a summary of the text. So you're going to summarize On Civil Disobedience. Tell me the big ideas. And then we'll move into answering the questions. So in this third paragraph, you will answer question about being a good citizen versus being a good person. So that's question number 2, right? So you will answer question number 2. You're going to give examples to support your answer. There should be quotes from the text, and all of those quotes should be cited. There should be analysis, and then there should be a transition. You're going to do that for question 3 as well, or whatever questions you select. You're going to do that same thing here. So that'll be question number 3. Then you're going to write your conclusion. Conclusions always begin with a restated thesis. You're going to make your closing arguments. And you're going to wrap up with a call to action. That is an outline for this essay. It does need to be in standard essay form. All of these components need to be in place in order to pass this essay. So please invest the time you need to be successful there. Everything you need is going to be in the modules tab. So if you scroll down to the very bottom, you've got your prompt there and you have your excerpt on civil disobedience here. So this is the piece you're going to be responding to by Walden Thoreau on civil disobedience. It's just a couple pages long. So read through those first 3 pages here, respond to the questions. It should be a complete essay. It should be in MLA format, Times New Roman, 12-point font, double spaced, all that good stuff. And that's how you're going to be successful in this essay. Upload it to the assignments tab, and you will be a free bird. Hooray!